The morning sun painted the Texas desert in shades of gold and crimson as Emma Sterling adjusted her bonnet against the merciless heat. 21 years old, with auburn hair that caught fire in the sunlight and green eyes that held more determination than most men twice her age, she rode beside her father's cavalry column with the confidence of someone born to the frontier. Captain William Sterling commanded 42 soldiers that morning, leading them through Devil's Canyon on what he called a peace mission. Emma knew better. Her father's idea of peace negotiations usually ended with Apache blood soaking into the desert sand. The ambush came without warning. One moment, Emma was studying the ancient rock formations that towered above them like silent sentinels. The next, the canyon erupted in chaos as Apache warriors descended from hidden positions, their war cries echoing off the stone walls like the screams of avenging spirits. Emma's horse reared as bullets whistled past her head. Through the dust and gunsmoke, she caught glimpses of painted faces and flashing steel, of soldiers falling from their saddles and horses collapsing in pools of crimson. Her father's voice boomed above the carnage, shouting orders that dissolved into meaningless noise. Then she saw him. Iona moved through the battle like death incarnate, his massive frame flowing with deadly grace as he fought his way toward her. Tall and powerful, with shoulder-length black hair adorned with eagle feathers and war paint streaking his bronzed face, he looked exactly like the savage her father had warned her about her entire life. But his eyes told a different story. As he reached for her, Emma saw something in those dark depths that stopped her breath. Not the mindless brutality she expected, but intelligence, pain, and something else she couldn't name. Something that made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Come," he said in perfect English, his voice deep and commanding. "Your death serves no purpose here." Before Emma could respond, strong arms lifted her from her saddle and placed her on his horse. As they rode away from the dying battle, Emma looked back to see her father's face twisted with rage and helplessness, his uniform stained with dust and defeat. They rode hard through the afternoon, the desert heat pressing down like a physical weight. Emma's back ached from maintaining rigid posture, refusing to lean against the broad chest behind her. But as hours passed and exhaustion took its toll, she found herself gradually relaxing, her body swaying with the rhythm of the horse's gait. When they finally stopped at a hidden spring surrounded by red rocks and ancient petroglyphs, Emma's legs nearly buckled as Iona lifted her down. Up close, she could see the details that had been lost in the chaos of battle. The scar that ran from his left ear to his jaw. The silver and turquoise ornaments in his hair. The way his dark eyes seemed to look right through her, seeing things she kept hidden even from herself. "Why didn't you kill me?" she asked, hating how her voice trembled. Iona studied her for a long moment before answering. "Because you are worth more alive than dead. Your father values you above all else. That makes you powerful. You're using me as a bargaining chip. I am using you to save my people." His voice carried no apology, only the weight of absolute certainty. "Your father's soldiers have killed our children, burned our homes, driven us from lands our ancestors walked for 1,000 years. Now he will know what it feels like to lose what matters most." Emma felt anger flare in her chest. "My father is trying to bring peace to this territory." Iona's laugh was harsh as desert wind. "Peace? Is that what you call the massacre at Crying Woman Creek? Where your father's men shot down women and children as they tried to flee across the river?" The accusation hit Emma like a physical blow. She had heard whispers about Crying Woman Creek, rumors that had been quickly silenced whenever she approached. But seeing the raw pain in Iona's eyes, she knew he spoke the truth. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No," he agreed, his voice softer now. "You did not ask." That night, as they camped beneath a ceiling of stars brighter than any Emma had ever seen, she found herself studying her captor across the small fire. He sat with the stillness of carved stone, yet she sensed a restless energy beneath the surface, like a caged wolf waiting for its moment to strike. "Tell me about Crying Woman Creek," she said quietly. Iona's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from the flames. "My wife was there. My daughter. They were gathering medicine plants by the river when your father's cavalry came at dawn." His voice remained steady, but Emma could hear the barely controlled emotion beneath each word. "Nayeli tried to shield our child with her body. The soldiers shot them both." Emma felt tears burn her eyes. "How old was she?" "Your daughter." 3 summers. Now Iona did look at her, and Emma saw the devastation that lived behind his stoic mask. She liked to chase butterflies. Said they were pieces of sky that had learned to dance. The simple, heartbreaking detail shattered something inside Emma's chest. This man wasn't the savage her father had described. He was a father who had lost everything, a husband whose world had been destroyed by men who looked like her, thought like her, shared her blood. "I'm sorry," she said, knowing the words were inadequate but needing to say them anyway. Iona nodded once, then turned back to the fire. "Sleep now. Tomorrow we travel to my people's hidden canyon. There you will wait while I negotiate your father's withdrawal from our lands." But Emma couldn't sleep. She lay wrapped in the blanket he had given her, staring up at the vast star field above, her mind churning with everything she had learned. How many other massacres had her father ordered? How many other children had died while she lived in comfortable ignorance at the fort? When she finally dozed, her dreams were filled with butterflies that bled when they touched the ground. The second day brought them deeper into Apache territory, following trails that seemed invisible to Emma's eyes but were clearly familiar to Iona. They stopped frequently to rest the horses and drink from hidden springs, each pause bringing them further from the world Emma had known and deeper into a landscape that felt as alien as the surface of the moon. During one such stop, as Emma knelt beside a narrow stream to splash cool water on her face, she became aware of Iona watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. "You are not what I expected," he said when she looked up at him. "What did you expect?" "A spoiled child. A woman who would weep and beg and promise me gold to set her free." He moved closer, his footsteps silent on the sandy ground. "Instead, I find someone who asks difficult questions and seeks uncomfortable truths." Emma rose slowly, suddenly very aware of how alone they were, how far from help or rescue. But the awareness wasn't entirely fear. There was something else, something that made her pulse quicken and her breath come short. "Perhaps we are both not what we expected," she said softly. Something shifted in Iona's expression, a crack in the armor of stoic control. For just a moment, Emma glimpsed the man beneath the warrior, the grieving husband, the lost father. The human being who had been forced to become something harder just to survive. Then the moment passed, and his mask slipped back into place. They reached the hidden canyon as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. Emma gasped as they rode through a narrow opening between towering rock walls and emerged into a secret valley that seemed like something from a dream. A clear stream wound through the center of the canyon, fed by waterfalls that cascaded down the red stone cliffs. Ancient cliff dwellings were carved into the rock faces, their dark windows watching like eyes. And scattered throughout the valley floor were the temporary shelters of Iona's people, brush wickiups and hide lodges that could be quickly dismantled and moved when danger threatened. Children stopped their games to stare as Emma rode through the camp. Women looked up from their cooking fires with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Warriors emerged from the shadows, hands resting on weapon hilts, their faces hard as the stone walls that surrounded them. Iona lifted Emma from his horse and spoke rapidly in Apache to an elderly woman who approached them. The woman, her silver hair braided with colored beads and her weathered face marked by decades of sun and sorrow, studied Emma with sharp black eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "This is Chodini," Iona said. "My grandmother. She asks why I bring the enemy into our sacred place." Emma straightened her shoulders and met the old woman's gaze directly. "Tell her I am not her enemy. Tell her I seek to understand what my people have done, and to find a way to make things right." Iona translated, and something flickered in Chodini's expression. She spoke again, her words rapid and musical. "She says understanding is the first step toward wisdom," Iona reported. "But wisdom without courage to act is worthless." Before Emma could respond, a commotion arose at the canyon entrance. A scout rode in at speed, calling out in urgent Apache. Within moments, the entire camp was in motion as people began packing their belongings with practiced efficiency. "What's happening?" Emma asked. Iona's face had gone grim. "Soldiers. A large force, moving this way. Someone has betrayed our location." Emma felt her blood turn to ice. "My father. Perhaps. Or perhaps someone else who profits from Apache suffering." He turned to her, his dark eyes intense. "Your father will not negotiate for your return. He will try to take you by force, and many will die in the attempt." "Then let me go to him," Emma said quickly. Let me convince him to withdraw peacefully. Iona shook his head. He will not listen. Men like your father see only what they choose to see. Around them, the camp continued its organized evacuation. Children were loaded onto horses with their mothers, while warriors prepared for what might be their final battle. Emma watched it all with growing desperation, knowing that her presence had brought this disaster upon these people. There has to be another way, she insisted. Iona was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. Perhaps there is. But it will require trust between us. Complete trust. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Iona called out to his warriors in Apache. Several of them approached, their expressions questioning. After a brief conference, he turned back to Emma. We will stage your escape, he said. Make it appear that you overpowered me and fled. You will ride toward your father's column, while my people escape in the opposite direction. Emma stared at him in shock. You're letting me go. I am gambling everything on the hope that you have learned something during our time together. That you will speak truth to your father instead of comfortable lies. The magnitude of what he was proposing hit Emma like a physical blow. He was trusting her with the lives of his entire people, betting that 3 days in the desert had transformed her enough to risk everything. What if I can't convince him? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Then my people will die, and I will have chosen poorly. Iona stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. But I do not think I have chosen poorly. Before Emma could respond, he was giving rapid orders to his warriors. Within minutes, they had created the scene of a struggle, scattered belongings, and disturbed earth that would tell the story of a captive's desperate escape. Iona even opened a cut on his own forehead, letting blood stain his shirt to make the deception more convincing. As Emma prepared to mount her horse, Chodini approached and pressed something into her hand. It was a small pendant made of turquoise and silver, carved in the shape of a butterfly. She says it belonged to Iona's daughter, he translated, his voice thick with emotion. She wants you to have it, so you will remember that Apache children dream the same dreams as white children. Emma closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling its warmth against her palm. Tell her I will never forget. As she prepared to ride away, Iona caught her horse's bridle, looking up at her with an expression she had never seen before, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. Emma, he said, speaking her name for the first time. When you tell your father what you have learned, remember this moment. Remember that enemies can become something else if they choose to see each other as human. Emma leaned down, her face close to his. I'll remember everything, she promised. Including this. Before she could lose her courage, she pressed her lips to his in a kiss that tasted of desert wind and desperate hope. When they parted, Iona's eyes held a light she had never seen before. Ride, he said softly. Ride toward whatever future we can build together. Emma urged her horse forward, her heart pounding as she left the hidden canyon and rode toward her father's approaching army. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of the Apache evacuation growing fainter with distance, and ahead lay a confrontation that would determine the fate of everyone she had come to care about. The pendant bounced against her chest as she rode, a constant reminder of a little girl who had chased butterflies and dreamed of dancing sky. Emma Sterling had ridden into the desert as her father's sheltered daughter. She was riding back as something entirely different, a woman who had seen past the lies she had been taught and found truth in the most unlikely place. Whether that transformation would be enough to prevent a massacre remained to be seen. But as the dust of her passage settled behind her, Emma carried with her not just the hopes of Iona's people, but the seeds of a love that had grown in the harshest soil and bloomed against all odds. The butterfly pendant caught the afternoon sun as she rode, flashing like a piece of sky that had learned to dance, carrying with it the promise that even in the darkest times, beauty and hope could still take flight. 3 hours later, Emma crested a ridge and saw her father's column spread out below, a line of blue uniforms and gleaming steel moving across the desert like a deadly river. At their head rode Captain Sterling himself, his face set in lines of grim determination as he pursued what he believed to be his daughter's kidnappers. Emma took a deep breath, touched the butterfly pendant one last time for courage, and rode down to meet her fate. Behind her, the desert wind whispered secrets among the rocks, carrying the promise that some storms, no matter how fierce, cannot destroy what is meant to endure. The confrontation that followed would echo through history, a moment when one woman's courage changed the course of two people's destiny. But that is a story for another day, written in the language of hope and paid for with the currency of love. In the end, Emma Sterling learned that the greatest journeys are not measured in miles traveled, but in the distance between who we were and who we choose to become. And sometimes, in the vast emptiness of the desert, two hearts can find each other across any divide, creating something beautiful enough to make even the butterflies weep with joy. If this story moved your heart as much as it moved mine, please share it with someone who believes in the power of love to transform even the deepest hatred. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of courage, romance, and the triumph of the human spirit over impossible odds. Your support means everything to us, and helps ensure that these powerful stories continue to inspire and transform lives around the world.